This video here is called the comic book page rough pencil stage. Okay guys, I'm gonna get right into this, and this one I would call creating a comic page. And this one would be in following the last video I did, which was efficient layouts. And you can watch that video, and that video could fill you in on creating the layout for your comic page first, and then getting into this part here. All right, because the layout, this is a rough layout I already created. And as I went, or as I covered in the other video, I just create a quick layout very efficiently. And this would be my next logical step, which would be to actually create my page, or to actually start drawing my page. Okay, so as you can see here, this is a rough layout, which I already imported into a larger resolution document, 600 dpi. So at this point, I want to draw, and this would be given to the colorist, or depending on what step I'm doing. If I'm just doing pencils, given to the inker for the next step, or as I would do is I would do this step and then go into inking myself. So here I want to actually draw a page and keep it in high resolution. That way it's ready for production and can be printed properly. Because if it's a low resolution or too low resolution, once produced or printed, you may run into some quality issues. So let's get into this part right here. So I created my layout. I did the layout as per the prior video. So I imported it right in here, and then the first thing I do is, once I import my page, I wanted to start building my different frames. So there's right here, that's the frame border tool. And with the frame border tool, I could actually create the borders I need. I already created these, and actually already did quite a lot of work already, as you can see there. So I'm going to turn off the bottom layer, so you can see. Okay, so I did a lot of work already. So with the frame tool, is I create a frame, and this isn't so much of a basic. I'm not gonna cover the basics, but I'll just move through them quickly. So I use the tool to create the frame I need, which I just show. For example, I use the frame border tool. I select it, and I could actually just, as per my layout, just create my border, create my rectangle, and it would automatically, the great thing about this tool is that it automatically create a layer, as you can see here, and the layer would also be masked. That way it could actually gives you a white border at a white background, so you can black out the back. So what I do is I actually turn that off, and as I work, I would actually go back to my original layout and scan, and I drop down the transparency. So I make it really light, and then I start drawing right on top. So from here, at this point, I can just to show you guys, say, okay, so I take a look at it, look at the perspective, see if that's right, if that's what I want. I can use my perspective tool to correct, which I did, and then I can start drawing. So to turn off that example one, let's turn on the real panel that I made. Okay, and as you can see, I'm also turning on my perspective ruler, so you can see the perspective ruler I used. Let's see if that's the right one. Let's see if that's the right one. I believe so. Yeah, that matches up. That matches up. Okay, there's some stuff going on here with the wall. That's part of the pattern over here, so on and so forth. So at this point, I actually start building my page. So I start building my figures at a stage where I'm correcting as best to my ability, correcting and building the form, building and creating my story. Okay, so usually I try to make it into 2 layers. Not necessary, but I actually take my background layer, which is 1 layer, which I do mostly all the backgrounds, and a figure layer. Reason why I like doing that is, for me, logically, I like to create my background, create my setting, which actually that chair was corrected, just so you know. Create the background, create the setting, and then I can start filling in my figures. So, sometimes the opposite is needed, but for something like this, I just want to start there. And I build the background in correct perspective, as correct as possible for me. This is I'm still trying to get better with perspective and understand that myself, and I've been doing it for a few years already, and there's still so much that can be learned. And okay, so as you can see, the figures are there. They're drawn as per my layout. So let me turn off the frame here. So if you take a look at my original layout, I actually started drawing right on top. And as I'm drawing, I'm correcting, looking at proportions and such, and maybe even angles, because that rough layout I did is just like a placeholder. But sometimes it just gives you the correct idea. Kind of lets you know where you wanna have everything. So I actually just build it in 2 parts, right? As I said, background and then figures. And I take it to about there, to where it's very readable. I know what I need to do, and the idea is there. So I would actually, as far as the stage that I'm at, I personally like calling this, the building stage, or what I call would be the rough pencil stage, because these are rough, but yet they still are penciled. So it's basically a rough pencil, because it's not totally refined, right? So I still consider it rough. And then what I usually do after that, once it's pretty much roughed out, I try to stay at the same level, or as far as keeping the roughs on every single layer I'm working on. So the next one would be this one here. So on that frame, I created that. Now, since it was simple and just a face shot, I just went ahead and went pretty far with it. It was just very simple for me to do that. And if you look, turning off the layer, you see my bottom layer is there. He's actually yelling to somebody right to their face, that guy. And I just started drawing right there. And of course, there were some changes. I wanted to zoom in a little bit more. I thought it was a little bit too far back, so I wanted to get into the character's face a little bit more. And generally, I don't go this. Well, depending on the shot, being that it's such kind of it's just basically a bust and like a face and emotion, I was able to just do that all in one pass, and it's pretty tight, and I'm pretty happy with it. And this would be tighter than usual, but again, because of the shot, because of the simplicity of the panel, I was able to take it pretty far where I can say, okay, that's pretty good. And since I'm inking the comic myself, that's enough information for me to go right into the inks. Then I moved on to the next panel, which I just want to show you guys in order. Would be this panel here. This is another panel where I had just lucky enough that my roughs, you see, and if you saw my prior video, you saw I took 2 steps to my rough. So that way, in a way, I'm doing roughs, but yet I'm still able to kind of geometrically, or on a basic level, put in the right proportions of the person and body and so forth. And as you can see, my word bubbles are there. I lay out for my word bubbles. It really took me a while to realize how I was killing my artwork, or killing myself creating artwork in places that were going to be completely obliterated by bubbles. Backgrounds are nice, and I think you always need at least 1 or 2 panels. I would say at least 2 panels per page that have a background. That way you know what the setting is. But depending on your story, you can completely go without it. But depending on what your focus is, and remember, for the most part, if an editor or another professional is looking at your pages, they're always gonna they're always gonna wonder why you skip the background. And if there's a very obvious and strong story wise reason, they know you did, then they'll be like, okay, great. But for the most part, they'll quickly think you were trying to avoid backgrounds, which isn't really professional. Let's not say professional, but just you know what? If you're not a big name and if you're not well known, people are gonna always question to why did you not do a background. So for the most part, if you're like me, just trying to make a name for yourself, or just trying to show people you can do the work and you want to do more of it, it's best to put in all the information as much as you can do, as much as necessary. You don't want to overkill it and just tire a page that much. So then this is another panel where it's somewhat simple. Just that there's a guy sitting there, and I was able to just take it right to very close to what I will call a tight pencil. That's very tight. So much was there that I was able to go into this stage rather quickly with one layer and then one shot. Okay, and that was, again, since I'm inking myself, that's enough information on there for me to move on. Okay, so let's go on to the next panel. Okay, this one's a very highly involved panel. All right, as I got into it, I saw that I needed really to fix my perspective and really figure out what was going on here. So I did it in a few different layers. You see, so I was lucky where I got two simple panels, but then 1, 2, 3, 4th. This 4th panel was like a lot going on, and that's okay, because I want to have at least one panel where there's a lot of visual information there. It'll give you a setting, and you know what's going on. And this comic here, this is at this point is a very new comic. I am doing this is for a future issue of a comic called Radical. If you want to if you want to check it out, the first issue is out. You can Google Radical comic book and Australia, because it's in Australia at this moment. Anyway, so moving on. Enough shameless plugs. Ha ha ha. No, just sharing some information, and hopefully I'll be able to work on other comics, and continuing with this one would be great. Okay, so moving on. Then I saw there was, so I built a strong background here. I put in my perspective. All right. Using these perspective tools, this tool right here. Let me highlight it for you. The ruler. You could actually draw your perspective in. And once you draw it in, oopsie, whoa, not gonna work if you don't select it. You can draw in your perspective, and then from there it'll work for your whole entire page. All right, and for those of you who already know how to use the tool, then cool. That's how that works. So going back onto these frames. Right, so then I drew my perspective grid, and then from there I was able to block out the room a lot better. So sometimes I only need so much information, so I do that. And then I noticed as I was drawing in the backgrounds and such, and furniture and everything, I saw that these figures were a little bit too large. These ones sitting here, I had to scale them down a little bit so that they can be in proportion to this table. This is like a big table. It's like a big interrogation room table in there with 2 guards there, and 1 guard I had to move because he really wouldn't have been there at that moment in time. So just to clear it up, then once I threw down this and kind of had a good feel for it, I just threw in another layer and really started to develop the room some more, while I most likely just dropped the base layer down more. And then as you can see, those figures are a little bit in better proportion to a figure that would be sitting in those chairs, in my opinion, and to and for the level I'm at now. Honestly, I always feel like every 2 to 3 months I feel like I'm growing very quickly, and I'm always noticing and fine tuning my art. So for where I'm at right now, I just wasn't working for me. So I decided to rework that back and that background guard there was drawn in the same layer as that one. So there's no hard rules here. It's just kind of like how I like to work. So if I turn off that base layer, all I have is that there, which is what I use mostly to build the rest of the room. Okay, so and again, this I try to keep it at one point as I work down the page to keep it on that same point where I call the rough pencils. See, the good thing is with tight backgrounds like I did here, and I build that room already, that's done. I mean, I can just go into inks. Now that's a whole nother part of it. That would be the next step for the drawing / inking. But I would consider that done. So this is pretty tight. Pretty tight. Meaning as far as pencils go, or where I want to be as far as this rough stage of the game where I know where everything is, and I know I can just clean it up and refine it. Okay, and again, this one did take me long, and if you see, I pulled in my grid, my perspective grid, even though I even have perspective ruler helping me work on the grid. I use that to my advantage. Okay, so then we're gonna go on to our last layer. Here you go. And on that last layer here, we have a bit more going on. It's a closer shot. There's some more drama going on here. Something important and kind of dramatic happened here. So that's why we're getting a little bit closer after our character here on with that straight jacket and holes in it. It holes for a certain reason. When you read the comic, you'll see why. He's there. Okay, so this one I did another one where I tried to be as strict as possible, meaning I try to keep the stages clear. Okay, now I can tell that on this one, you see, I did some erasing afterwards to clean it up a little bit, which I try not to do, but shame on me, I did anyway. But so I did the same thing as before, where I kind of know what angle I want. Okay, let's turn that off. Okay, so that's there. That's the information I want. I know I want them sitting there. Then I started throwing in the grid. Oh, the perspective grid. That's not it. So I'm trying to pull out the right grid here. I think this one's it. Yeah, this one's it. Just hard to see. I must have changed something on there, or maybe I deleted it. No, that's the right one. Oh, I see why. I was holding on to another tool. Okay. Yeah, no, actually I don't have that layer. I must have deleted it. But it's okay. It was perspective grid to keep me on track as far as the angle. So what I did was I built the room with the correct angles. Let's turn off. You see, we're gonna turn off the mask. That way we don't see our bottom layer. And as you can see, the lines, I do have lines there and guides of where everything's at. I know what the room looks like, so I know where to position things. So I did that, and then moved into the rest of the characters. So again, I like to put the backgrounds on one layer, and then figures or like objects in different perspective, same perspective but different angle, maybe in another layer. That way I can move those elements separately if I need to. So then I got it to about this stage, and you see where the stage is, where I know where everything is at. It's not totally completely clean, or not super clean as I would consider it. I would just say again, it's a rough pencil, a very rough but yet informative, and it's at the stage where I know I can just lower the opacity on the layer, I mean, right? There's right here, or the transparency, opacity, transparency, however you want to call it. I probably still use a lot of Adobe terminology, and that's because I use Adobe Illustrator for over 15 years professionally. I did a lot of artwork, corporate artwork, corporate design, and Illustrator was my go-to, Adobe Illustrator. So that actually helped, that and Photoshop, and that helped open the door for me to learn other software like this. Okay, so in backgrounds, so I have that there. So then once I'm there, I could actually drop that down, and then I can say, okay, now I want to start actually building or drawing, or doing what I have to do. So on this one, let's see what I did here. This one, I have a vector. So if you look at my another video I did on making objects, easy objects, or creating vector objects. I did this I did these as a vector on a separate layer, because like I said before, once you have this built and drawn, I could ink it very easily, or it's somewhat considered inked already. I have my clean lines. All I have to do is come in with my textures. Okay, so I showed you my inks. Aha. So there you go. Here's a little treat for you guys. That's basically what my final page looks like. Okay, but let me turn that off because we're not there yet. Okay, so here I actually built the background, and then after that went into the inking stage, because this actually layer was so, it had enough information for me to start inking, which I did here. So as you can see, and as far as textures and stuff, it's up to me what I wanted to do. I like this look. This is as far as I wanted to go. This is as far as what I thought was necessary. But you'll see one important thing here, that the background is already built. So all I did was basically ink the figures. I inked the figures, and then from inking the figures, I actually added textures for the background and anything else I really needed to do. And that's basically how I work. Okay, so again, and staying on the topic of building your page, I think this is important, because now at this stage I have everything in the same stage, right? And this lets me look at the whole page where it is. I can zoom out just to take a look at, as far as a page, how it's balanced, how I like the balance. Do I have enough? How's the rhythm of the page? Is it working? Is it quick enough? Is it slow enough? Is it dramatic enough? All those things that I ask myself as a storyteller. I may be wrong a lot of times. I may be wrong all the time. I don't know. But this is my stories that I'm trying to tell. Well, not my story, actually, not this one. But this is a story I'm trying to tell visually, my way. And I encourage you to try to tell these stories your way, and as best you can. And you'll see that you can probably tell a very good story without instinctually, without having to kill yourself with, or just say, be too hard on yourself as far as technique and execution. There's a saying going around. It's quite popular right now, and it's basically finished but not perfect. I think there is a lot of validity. Oh my gosh, use words I know how to pronounce to that, because having the perfect story in your mind, or having the perfect story that you never finish, can never be shared with the world, or with no one. And you can eventually work on a story and revise it, but you have to get to at least to that finished stage. So that's where this is at here. So this is where I think looks fine. I would say this is a little bit of rough. You know, this what I would call would be the rough pencils, where I can. The reason why I would call it rough is that some panels really need to be drawn in clearer or cleanly. That way I could actually get to work. Okay, so I think this covers this one step in the process very well. The next step would be that I would probably cover in a different video, would be to take it to the tight stage, because taking it to the tight stage really helps you with your inking stage. You see, since I had so much going on this first panel, I decided to, okay, so this is fine, and what I normally do is I drop down the transparency very low, where I can see what's going on, and then on things that I need to know or understand, I just with one layer, you know, I was able to draw everything in as cleanly as possible for me to know that I could just ink that. And especially with this panel here, there's something going on there and stuff I want to convey. So being at this stage helped me there. While sometimes you do have to decide if that's where you want to stay. If you want to just go to the inking stage for yourself, or do you add the other step? You know, if I had someone else inking for me, I would have to have every layer finished like that. Okay, so I think this covers this part of creating a comic page. And so just to reiterate, you want to just take the whole page to what I would say a nice rough pencil stage. Rough pencil stage. That way you get a feeling for the whole page. And also, this is probably most important, is that you can actually send this. You can send these kinds of pictures to your editor or the writer or the team to show them where you're at as far as process, and they might catch something. They might catch something that you did in error, which has happened to me before, which I, you know, had possibly put in the wrong type of character or the version of a character or something. They're like, oh, hey, that looks like you're going this way, but it should be that way, or so on and so forth. So this would be a good time to send something like this to the editor you're working with. Now, I've never worked for, and hopefully one day I will. I've never worked for Marvel or DC, and I don't know how the workflow is with those guys, or even if they want to see how many steps they want to see. But so far, I've worked with indie publishers, and they don't mind lots of communication. So something like this, you can just email it, export it as a JPEG or what have you. You know, send it as a low res, just to show them where you're at. Okay, so I would say that would conclude what this is about, and hopefully this could be helpful to you now or in the future, or by any means something that'll give you a different way to look at it, a different approach. There are no hard rules here. I as far as being an expert or anything, I wouldn't call myself an expert in this field at all. I would say I'm seasoned, and I have some experience and some knowledge, and I'm willing to share. That's it. And hopefully this can be helpful to at least one of you. And if it's everyone, that would be awesome. That totally would make my day. Okay, guys, so I'm going to close this out and end it right here. Thanks for watching, guys, and please check out my Patreon page for more in-depth videos. And please check out my Etsy shop, search GeorgeVegaArt, where you can see over 100 items I have listed there of original art and prints.